Commonly when looking at many YouTube videos related to using velocity banking to pay down credit card debt, the strategy can come across as a no-brainer. But the truth is, the strategy really isn't suitable for everyone. In today's video, we'll take a closer look at reasons and situations that would cause me to steer clear of using velocity banking to pay down credit card debt. Please note, in the video when referencing velocity banking, we are referring to it in the sense of using it to pay off credit card debt. For those new to the channel, welcome to Concepts Made Simple, where we aim to simplify everyday financial and self-improvement topics. If you enjoyed this content and you're looking for additional content related to velocity banking and everyday finance, please consider subscribing to the channel down below so we continue to make content like this and grow our audience. Before diving in, if you don't have a good idea of how velocity banking with the credit card works, I first recommend watching our explainer video. We'll leave a link down below in the description. The first reason that I would avoid using velocity banking to pay off my credit card debt is if I was someone who did not track my finances. When it comes to velocity banking, it requires meticulous tracking of expenses, balances, and payments to ensure that it's effective. But if I'm a person who may find this to be burdensome, I would choose to avoid the strategy, as when it comes to velocity banking, minimal changes in spending or allocation of funds can make all the difference. And if I'm not tracking these changes carefully, I could easily find myself in a worse place than when I started. Our second reason to avoid velocity banking is around the nature of our expenses. If I was someone who had minimal expenses, I would likely avoid velocity banking, as the impact I'd be able to have on the average daily balance on my credit card would be very minimal. For example, say I had $10,000 in credit card debt and $300 in monthly expenses that I could pay onto my credit card. Well, in this case, paying $300 in expenses is going to have a very minimal impact on my average daily balance. Say the interest on my credit card is 18%. The monthly interest then on a balance of $10,000 would be about $150 per month. And if I were to use velocity banking to lower my average daily balance down to say $9,850, the interest would still be $147.75, leaving me with a savings of $2.25. Which realistically isn't going to move the needle on my $10,000 in debt. And the same is true if the majority of my expenses cannot be paid through my credit card. For example, maybe the majority of my expenses are made up of my rent, utilities, and student loans. Well, in most cases, these are not eligible to be paid with a credit card, so they cannot help me lower my average daily balance. If these are the majority of my expenses, again, the impact of velocity banking will likely be very minimal, and the effort that needs to go into tracking and setting up this strategy really just doesn't seem worth it. The third situation that I would choose to avoid using velocity banking to pay off credit card debt is if my expenses were greater than my income. Although you could still use the strategy and in some cases lower your average daily balance, which in turn might save you on some interest, there's still a fundamental issue that needs to be solved. If I was someone who was spending more than I take home, strategies like velocity banking would not be my focus. In this case, I would be focused on getting myself into a situation where my income is greater than my expenses. And we do not say that lightly, as we do recognize that it is something that is much easier said than done. Our final reason to avoid velocity banking is by far the biggest reason that would cause me to do so. And that is if I'm someone who has a history of having a lack of discipline around my finances. By paying all of your expenses through your credit card, you're first putting a large chunk of your income onto your card to make room to pay for these expenses. The challenge with this is that it now opens up more room on your credit card, and it might provide a false sense that you now have extra room on your card for additional purchases. This is why discipline is so important with velocity banking, because if you start making additional purchases on your card that are not related to your expenses, the value of velocity banking will quickly diminish. And for some people, this value will diminish to the point where you'll be in a much worse place than when you started. For example, if you start using that additional room on your card for things like dining out, shopping, or buying a new car, velocity banking will not help you accelerate your debt payment. Instead, it will likely decelerate or maybe even come to a complete halt. That is why it's extremely important to truly reflect on your financial habits to see if you have the discipline to successfully use velocity banking. And the truth is that for many people who find themselves with substantial credit card debt, a lot of that typically stems from impulse spending. So until you have that under control, velocity banking will likely not make much of a difference. Like with any financial strategy, it is always important to weigh both the pros and cons to make the best choice for your unique situation. Thank you for watching today's video, and if you found the content to be helpful, it would be greatly appreciated if you could leave a like on this video and really consider subscribing to the channel for more content related to velocity banking and everyday finances.